Well, welcome to the 700 Club. President Biden warns that the U.S. and NATO are prepared to strike if Vladimir Putin uses chemical weapons in Ukraine. He also says sanctions on Russia will lead to food shortages, including right here in the United States.
The Russian military continues to pound Ukraine, leaving cities like Mariupol in ruins. 300 people seeking shelter in a theater were killed there during an airstrike. CBN's Brody Carter reports.
Unclaimed ashes of the dead are piling up at Kyiv's main crematorium. Workers there say they're unable to collect them as so many have left Ukraine's capital to seek safety. That's happening amid reports that Moscow has forcibly removed hundreds of thousands of civilians from devastated Ukrainian cities and taken them to Russia to be used as hostages to pressure Ukraine to surrender. At the NATO Emergency Summit Thursday, more aid for Ukraine was announced, but it fell short of Ukraine's request for aircrafts, tanks, and other weapons. Today, as the summit wrapped up, President Biden announcing a new deal on natural gas with the European Union. So Europe won't need to import as much energy from Russia, which supplies almost 40% of the EU's gas and a quarter of its oil.
This initiative focuses on two core issues. One, helping Europe reduce its dependency on Russian gas as quickly as possible. And secondly, reducing Europe's demand for gas overall.
The president also acknowledging Thursday that Russian sanctions will have other effects, like food shortages, including here in the U.S.
With regard to food shortage, yes, we did talk about food shortages. And it's going to be real. The price of these sanctions is not just imposed upon Russia. It's imposed upon an awful lot of countries as well, including European countries and our country as well.
Despite the president's sanctions and other economic moves, Americans want him to be stronger. A new Associated Press poll shows just 56% think that he has been tough enough on Russia, and only about a quarter are very confident that he has the ability to handle a crisis. And in Ukraine itself, with Russia's military bogged down, the U.S. and NATO allies are planning for what Putin might do next, warning what would happen if he uses weapons of mass destruction, including chemical weapons.
We would respond. We would respond if he uses it. The nature of the response would depend on the nature of the use. It would trigger a response in kind. Whether or not you're asking whether NATO would cross, we'd make that decision at the time.
For now, heavy fighting has led to shellings in Kharkiv and Kyiv, leaving houses on fire. And this bird's-eye view of Mariupol shows a city in ruin. And the government of Mariupol said today 300 people died in a Russian airstrike on March 16th at a theater being used as a bomb shelter. The deadly warfare has meant an increasing flood of refugees, more than 3.5 million. The U.S. will take in 100,000 of them. The overwhelming majority are still in Europe. The lion's share have gone to Poland, where President Biden will travel Saturday. Brody Carter, CBN News.
Well, get ready for food prices to go up. And the reason isn't the sanctions against Russia. The reason is the war in Ukraine. Ukraine is the largest supplier of red wheat in Europe. And so if you take that source of supply out of the market, suddenly prices are going to soar. It's actually good news for American farmers, but it's going to be very bad news for American consumers. I do question what the president means by responding in kind, because when you take that literally, it means that if Russia uses chemical weapons, NATO will respond with chemical weapons, which obviously leads to World War III. So I think he needs to clarify that and get very specific as to what is going to happen if Russia starts using chemical weapons. Well, Operation Blessing has been on the ground, sending relief supplies to Ukraine. Here's CBN's European Regional Director, Mark Dykens.
We are here at our Operation Blessing warehouse at the border with Ukraine. And as you can see behind me, there's a truck being loaded currently with full of relief goods that go straight into Ukraine, from where our team on the ground will take those items to the people who need it most. And first and foremost, we are so thankful for your support. Thank you for your generous contributions and your prayers to help us to make this possible. It means so much to the people in Ukraine, and also means so much to us here as an Operation Blessing disaster relief team to have your support and your prayers. Because together we are able to bless the people of Ukraine through these relief goods that will be a blessing to them. But also thank you so much for everything else you're doing. We have a presence here at the border at Medica, where we're serving refugees hot meals and hot drinks, and we provide them a warm and heated space so they can rest and recover. And also we have a central kitchen from where we are preparing meals to bless many, many people who are crossing the border every night. So there's so much together that we're doing, and it's an ongoing need here. And we're committed for the long term. So thank you for your ongoing support, and thank you also for your ongoing prayers.
The need is massive. We need to be there for the long haul. This isn't going to be a short-term crisis. There's no easy fix here. You're seeing the devastation in Ukraine. If the war would end today, the problems for those refugees will go on for months, if not years. So we want to be there for them. We want to let them know that God loves them, we love them, and you can be a part of it. How? Just give us a call and say, yes, I want to give. 1-800-700-7000. We have an Operation Blessing Disaster Relief Fund. You can write to us at CBN Center, Virginia Beach, Virginia, 23463. Just write Operation Blessing Disaster Relief Fund on the memo line of a check. You can text OB Crisis to 71777, or you can go to cbn.com. There's a place on the internet where you can designate your gift to helping people in need in Ukraine. Do it now. 1-800-700-7000. In other news here at home, the top Republican in the Senate says he will vote against President Biden's nominee for the Supreme Court. Ephraim Graham has that story from the CBN newsroom. Ephraim?
Gordon, Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell says he has several reasons for voting against Ketanji Brown Jackson for a seat on the high court, such as concerns about her judicial philosophy. He also worries she could engage in judicial activism. McConnell's decision was not a surprise, though it does show strengthening Republican opposition to Jackson's nomination. Still, she is expected to be confirmed when the vote is held next month. Turning now overseas, while the Biden administration appears to be on the verge of completing the new Iran nuclear deal in Vienna, Israel is warning how one part of the agreement might have dangerous implications for the entire Middle East. Chris Mitchell brings us that story from Jerusalem.
After months of talks, the U.S. pursuit of this agreement could mean removing Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard from the list of foreign terrorist organizations. Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett calls the potential concession dangerous because it involves the world's deadliest terror organization.
The terrorist group, the IRGC, is trying to murder Israelis and certain Americans around the globe. Unfortunately, we're seeing a determination to sign a nuclear deal at almost any cost, including saying that the biggest terrorist group in the world is not a terrorist organization. This is too steep a price.
They have become the operational terrorist arm of the Iranian government, which employs terrorism as a tool of statehood. And that's why we actually designated the IRGC as a foreign terrorist organization.
Former Deputy National Security Advisor for the Middle East, Victoria Coates, sees the IRGC as a menace to the region. As part of the Trump administration, she helped designate the group as a foreign terrorist organization, or FTO.
What was powerful about the FTO for the IRGC, which was groundbreaking, it was historic, we hadn't done that to a military before, is it immediately stopped a lot of the IRGC's commercial activities, which were one of the economic lifelines to the regime in Tehran.
Coates says the Revolutionary Guard resembles a cancer, spreading terror through the region and using proxies like Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis, plus international assassination threats. It's also behind Iran's ballistic missile program and its drone arsenal. Any U.S. agreement to remove the IRGC from the terrorist list would supposedly require a promise not to spread terror in the region. Coates points out, after the Biden administration lifted the designation off the Houthis in Yemen, they simply increased terror activities.
So interestingly, as Israel has gotten closer to both Saudi and UAE, they've been talking about this and what happened when the Houthi came off the list and how terrible it's going to be if the IRGC comes off the list. They'll get a lot of money. They'll have freedom of movement again. And we've seen almost for the first time in my memory, a united message out of Abu Dhabi, Riyadh, and Jerusalem that this is unacceptable. And these are three of the United States' most powerful allies in the region. We should listen to them.
If the Biden administration does not listen, many believe allies like the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Israel will find themselves targets of one of the world's most dangerous terror organizations. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
A deal to keep an eye on for sure. Gordon?
Well, it's a deal that should never be made. Why in the world would you remove the terrorist designation over a group that is primarily responsible for the terror that currently exists in the Middle East? Who funds Hamas? Who funds Hezbollah? Who was behind the proxy war in Yemen? Who was behind the drone strikes of the refinery in Saudi Arabia? Who is plotting to wipe Israel off the map? Who calls the United States the Great Satan? Well, the same group. Why in the world would you ever give them anything? Why would you even negotiate with them? There's no point in it. They're not changing their ideology, and they're literally laughing behind the scenes as what is being given up. They told China, we don't understand why we're getting so much in these negotiations. It's more than we ever hoped for. It makes no sense to me. I hope someone can wake them up in the State Department that if you unleash a terror group, get ready because they are going to attack.